Story begins with Peter Parker, who has returned to his universe after 4 years and is now living a completely anonymous life. His old memories have been erased from people's minds, so no one in New York recognizes him. Still, he continues helping the city by becoming Spider-Man and joining the police force, but he never tells anyone his real identity. Peter, who has defeated many powerful villains, has now become a hero of the city. But deep inside, he is completely alone and emotionally broken. He lives in an old, rundown place where he has created his own AI system. The system makes it easy for him to access information about his suit and other important data. One day, while Peter is talking to his police officer friend, they receive news that a tanker has entered the city and is not stopping. Peter immediately arrives at the scene and tries to stop the tanker, but it seems as if the tanker has already targeted a specific location. Here, we see Frank, also known as the Punisher, on the road. The tanker is actually heading toward the DODC building. Meanwhile, Scorpion is also shown. His prison transport is being moved at this time. After a great deal of effort, Peter finally manages to stop the tanker. However, by then, it has already entered the DODC building and caused massive damage. The surprising part is that there is no armed man inside the tanker. Instead, there is a strange, doll-like entity that can jump from one person to another and take control of their body. A police officer is possessed and taken directly upstairs. Then Scorpion is also released and sent somewhere else. Peter cannot understand what this strange entity is or how it is able to jump from one body to another. After talking to the police and collecting all the available information, Peter goes directly to Yelena. Yelena's office is also extremely unusual. She has designed her entire office around a swimming pool, complete with a bathtub and spa. The idea is that no one can enter the place carrying a weapon. Every visitor has to remove their clothes before entering. Peter has to do the same. This creates a hilarious situation because Peter refuses to remove his mask. He keeps his identity hidden even while following Yelena's strange security rules. During their conversation, Yelena tells Peter that whoever has been searching the DODC building the most recently appears to be looking for something connected to a mysterious term called VMAX. Hearing this name immediately catches Peter's attention. He decides to get to the bottom of the mystery. He also wants to meet the people at the DODC and find out who attacked them and, more importantly, why. Peter goes directly to the DODC building, where he is once again scanned and asked to remove his clothes. But this time, too, he refuses. The director of the building, Bill, takes Peter to his office. Inside, Peter sees a collection of different weapons. He is extremely happy to see them because he knows they could be useful if a dangerous situation arises. The DODC normally doesn't leave people with superpowers alone. They either capture them or conduct research on them. However, Bill and Peter are old acquaintances. Because of this relationship, Bill treats Peter as a partner and tells him that he needs to help take care of security because there could be a major threat coming. Peter agrees, but he strongly suspects that Bill is hiding something about VMAX. Later, Peter is sitting in a cafe with his police officer friend and discussing the case. Suddenly, he hears the voice of his best friend, Ned, who is buying things for a party. Peter follows him to MJ's house, where a housewarming party is taking place. Because everyone's memories of Peter have been erased, no one recognizes him anymore. This means Peter cannot go up to MJ and hug her, nor can he openly talk to Ned. He can only stand at a distance and watch them. Eventually, Ned and MJ talk to Peter because he happens to be in the room, and this makes Peter happy. But at the same time, it is heartbreaking because neither of them realizes who he really is. Then Peter discovers that MJ now has a new boyfriend. When Peter sees them kissing, his heart breaks. All his old memories come rushing back. He becomes emotional and quietly leaves the party. As Peter walks away from the house, strange changes begin occurring inside his body. Half of his spider cells suddenly become extremely active. His eyes turn black because a mutation has caused his spider cells to start dominating his human cells. As a result, organic webbing begins shooting out of his body. This is completely different from the mechanical web shooters he has always used. When Peter wakes up the next morning, he discovers that he is trapped inside a web cocoon. He falls to the ground and has no idea what is happening to his body. Somehow, he manages to return home and asks his AI system for an explanation. The AI tells him that he may be experiencing extreme mental stress or physical exhaustion, which could be causing his spider cells to become dominant. If the process continues, the spider cells could eventually take complete control of his body. The AI advises him to rest or find a cure before the condition gets worse. Peter realizes that he needs someone's help. Just then, news arrives that Scorpion has escaped the city and is attacking people. Peter immediately becomes Spider-Man and goes after him. The two engage in a massive fight. However, it soon appears that someone has actually captured Scorpion and that he is no longer in control of his own mind. At the same time, Peter's mutation reaches another level. His powers become so unstable that he accidentally damages a police car. Peter has always believed in saving people rather than hurting them. But this time, while trying to save one person, he almost ends up killing someone else. The police officer angrily confronts him and tells him that he needs to take a break. Peter is also suffering from an intense headache that he can barely tolerate. The next day, Peter decides to understand what is happening to him. He goes directly to Bruce Banner, also known as the Hulk, and asks him how he controls his inner anger and the transformation inside his body. Bruce explains that his body has a system that helps calm him down before his anger becomes uncontrollable and prevents him from from causing unnecessary destruction. This gives Peter an idea. He decides to create a chip that can suppress his emotions and control his spider cells so that his human cells can continue functioning normally. Bruce warns Peter that the idea could be dangerous. If Peter suppresses his powers at the wrong moment, he might not be able to access them when he actually needs them. But Peter sees the chip as his only way out because his organic webbing and spider cells are becoming increasingly difficult to control. The biggest problem is that the chip repeatedly overheats and stops working. Peter continues testing it. Then, when organic webbing suddenly shoots out of his hands again, he becomes frustrated. He has always relied on mechanical web shooters, so he hates the idea of his body producing webbing on its own. Meanwhile, the same mysterious entity continues appearing through different people. It speaks to Peter, warns him, and tells him to stay away from the DODC. Peter doesn't want to hurt anyone, but because he cannot completely control his powers, he has already caused significant destruction. Then Peter discovers that his former girlfriend, MJ, is also in danger. Without wasting any time, he goes to MJ's house and asks her to come with him. At first, MJ refuses, but when Spider-Man asks her, she eventually agrees. When MJ stands in front of him, Peter suddenly feels as though she remembers everything. Peter becomes emotional. He removes his mask, hugs her, and tells her how much he has missed her. But then he discovers the truth. This is not actually MJ. The mysterious entity has taken control of her body. It has deliberately appeared as MJ to warn Peter that it can hurt the real MJ at any time. Peter becomes furious. His organic webbing becomes uncontrollable again. His eyes turn black, and he pushes the possessed MJ away. However, Peter never intended to hurt MJ. At the right moment, he manages to save the real MJ. The entity escapes. When MJ finally comes to her senses, she is shocked and confused about how she ended up there. She asks Peter to leave the house. But Peter knows that MJ is now in serious danger, so he takes her somewhere safe. He then goes to Frank, also known as the Punisher. Frank's house is already protected by a series of dangerous traps. Peter and MJ manage to get inside while avoiding them. Peter asks Frank to keep MJ safe for a few days because her life is in danger. Frank initially refuses, but Peter reminds him that he once saved Frank's life. After some emotional moments and a little humor between them, Frank finally agrees. Meanwhile, Peter continues working on the chip. It keeps overheating and getting damaged. MJ examines the chip because she has knowledge of biomechanics. With Peter's help, she eventually manages to repair it. They discover that the real problem was the temperature of the chip. The mask was too close to it, causing the chip to overheat. After fixing the problem, the chip finally starts working properly. Peter realizes that this technology could potentially be used to suppress the powers of almost any superpowered individual. Peter then learns that a woman named Jean Grey is behind everything. She has been searching for VMAX and appears to have knowledge that even the DODC doesn't fully understand. Then news arrives that Jean has launched a major attack on the DODC. Peter leaves MJ with Frank and immediately heads to the DODC. MJ urges Frank to help Peter. She asks him that if he were in Peter's position, wouldn't he want someone to help him too? Frank finally decides to go after Peter. When Peter reaches the DODC building, he discovers that the attack has been devastating. The building has been heavily damaged, and almost no one is left inside. Meanwhile, Hulk is trying to break into the building. Peter and Frank both end up fighting Hulk. However, Frank doesn't want to continue fighting him. Peter tells Frank to go after Jean while he stays behind and handles Hulk. Frank reaches Jean, but Jean quickly takes control of him. She then tries to open a door near Bill. Meanwhile, Peter continues fighting Hulk. He repeatedly attempts to place the chip on Hulk's neck so that he can suppress Hulk's anger, but every attempt fails. Eventually, Jean manages to intervene. With Peter's help, Hulk finally calms down. Hulk realizes that he has made a mistake. He then jumps from the building and leaves. At the same time, Jean reaches Bill. Peter manages to knock Jean unconscious with Bill's help. But before Jean loses consciousness, she suddenly says a name while looking at Peter: Sarah. Peter doesn't understand who Sarah is or why Jean said her name. Jean is arrested and taken away for questioning. Peter immediately asks Bill about his connection to Sarah and VMAX, but Bill denies knowing anything. Meanwhile, Peter returns to MJ. There, he discovers that MJ has read a letter Peter wrote 4 years earlier. After reading the letter, MJ wants to know who the real Spider-Man is, the person behind the mask who apparently loves her. Peter finally removes his mask, but MJ tells him that she doesn't remember the world or the boy Peter is talking about. She doesn't remember loving him. Hearing this completely breaks Peter's heart. He has spent all this time trying to save other people's lives, yet his own life feels almost completely destroyed. MJ asks Peter to leave, but after he reaches the door, she calls him back. She wants him to meet Ned. When Ned discovers that the real Spider-Man is standing inside his house, he becomes extremely excited. He starts showing Peter all of his inventions. For the first time in a long time, Peter gets to spend time with his best friends. The three of them share some genuinely happy moments together. Meanwhile, Peter talks to Yelena about Jean and Sarah. He discovers that Jean had a sister named Sarah who possessed the same ability to take control of other people's bodies. But Sarah was far more powerful than Jean. She had taught Jean how to take control of another person and how to move from one body to another. Peter realizes that Jean can transfer herself between people within a radius of approximately 35 meters. Then the film reveals the real story behind Jean and Sarah. When DODC director Bill discovered Sarah's powers, he wanted to capture her while she was unconscious and use her for experiments. Jean tried to save her sister, but Sarah used her own powers to send Jean away so that she could protect her. Since then, Jean has been trying to find her sister. The truth is even darker. Bill had imprisoned Jean and subjected her to brutal experiments while repeatedly questioning her about Sarah. Jean herself had become a victim of the DODC's experiments. Once Peter understands everything, he decides to rescue Jean and uncover the complete truth. He heads back to the DODC. But as soon as he reaches the building, he is stopped from entering. The Hand is sent out to stop him. This leads to another huge action sequence, with plenty of fighting and a little comedy. Meanwhile, Bill is using Jean to record her powers so that he can attempt to copy them and implant them into someone else's mind. However, Peter realizes that such powers cannot truly be copied because they are fundamentally connected to the individual who possesses them. Then Jean notices the word VMAX written at the top of a ventilation shaft. She immediately understands what it means. Her sister Sarah was kept here, and she died here. The realization sends Jean into a state of uncontrollable rage. Her powers explode outward and create a massive energy shield. Everyone within the area becomes completely frozen. The effect spreads across an area of approximately 1.5 kilometers. Frank witnesses the scene from outside the shield. He decides that he has to stop Jean because Peter has already told him everything about her. Inside the building, Peter continues fighting the Hand. Even after taking a brutal beating, he refuses to give up. Eventually, he defeats them and reaches Jean. Jean threatens Peter and tells him that she can enter his mind. This time, Peter does something unexpected. He allows her to enter. Inside Peter's mind, Jean discovers his entire life. She realizes that Peter has also lost everyone he loved. He lost his mother, his aunt, his friends, and the life he once knew. Yet despite losing everything, Peter never allowed his pain to turn him into a monster. He continued using his powers to save people. Jean finally understands that Peter is not different from her. They are both people who have lost someone they loved. This realization changes Jean. She becomes less hostile toward Peter and begins to see him as a friend rather than an enemy. The two share their pain and understand each other. But suddenly, Frank appears in the distance and prepares to shoot Jean. Peter's spider sense warns him of the danger. Without hesitation, Peter jumps in front of Jean and takes the bullet himself. Jean survives and escapes. Peter is critically injured. His suit is torn, his body is badly wounded, and his chances of survival are extremely low. Jean tries to keep him alive using whatever emotional strength she has left. Eventually, Peter opens his eyes. He wakes up in a hospital. Frank is sitting beside him, crying. Nobody has ever seen Frank cry before. Peter notices him and starts laughing. Outside the hospital, people are praying for Spider-Man to survive. No one knows his real name. When Peter finally leaves the hospital, he wears a Punisher mask so that the public believes Spider-Man is still around. Jean also leaves to begin a new life. Peter visits his aunt's grave and plants flowers. Afterward, he meets his best friend and prepares for another mission. The mutation inside his body has finally stabilized. His spider cells no longer dominate him. He can control his powers again. His relationship with his friends may never be exactly the same as before, but a new beginning has finally started. Now let's talk about the post-credit scene. After the movie ends, we see that Spider-Man is no longer in his original universe. His dimension has changed. Peter has been transported somewhere completely different. He has reached the Doomsday dimension. And here, everyone will eventually have to come together to fight one massive battle. The story is far from over. Spider-Man's next chapter is about to begin.